Hello and welcome to the FF podcast. This is episode 2. Today I'm going to be joined by TKS Mima. TKS Mima, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is TKS Mima, and I am a competitive player. And I also do casual, as I've been in many of Shark's KOs.
That is true. That is true. We've had some good times in the KOs. Bit of self promo to start the podcast off. As you can see on screen, not links, but names there for the channels. So if you'd like to come along, follow my Twitch, name on screen. Also check out TKS Mima's stuff. I don't know if he uploads, but
I
maybe.
rarely stream, but I do stream sometimes.
Well, there you go. So he does stream sometimes. So if he does stream, check him out. Something probably most of you already know. Okay, well, an introductory question to start off. I'm going to start asking this to everybody. What is your favorite Mario Kart game?
Honestly, it would have to be Mario Kart DS because that is the first game I ever played. And also, every single time when we went on holidays, me and my brother would both take a DS, and we would both play like connect to each other and play whilst we were on like planes. And I remember one time when we were on a flight when we were younger, there were four of us, all with DSs and Mario Kart DS, and we all sat together on the plane and played Mario Kart DS, and that was a very fun time. So that has to be, because it's my first ever Mario Kart and my childhood game. It has to be Mario Kart DS.
Nice, nice. I've got to say, it's a good game. I think my story was I got my DS for like my 6th birthday, and it came with Pokemon Black, so that's always been a favorite game of mine. But I picked up Mario Kart DS not too long after that, probably on the same day actually. Not as many memories with it as you said you had, but I do remember playing download play. Bringing it into primary school on your little last day. Bring your DS in, everyone goes on download play, and you all race each other. That was quite fun. I remember one kid had a 3DS already. The rest of us were still stuck on DSs, and one kid had 3DS and still played with us. But it was fun. He played a bit of Mario 64 as well. Well, Mario 64 DS. Yeah, it's a good choice. Normally I'd expect you to say Mario Kart Wii, but yeah, I'd probably say my favorite Mario Kart game is probably Wii. Actually, maybe Super Mario Kart. Actually, really controversial choice, but I really like Super Mario Kart. It's difficult, but I just love the soundtrack, and the graphics are not that great, but they're nostalgic.
Graphics are nostalgic, and that's why I love most games. It's normally nostalgia more than anything.
Exactly. I mean, like my favorite game of all time is Majora's Mask on the N64. I mean, like I'm not really bothered about the graphics. It is what it is. As long as the game's fun,
Yeah,
I'm not too bothered.
exactly.
Well, that was a nice start. Good choice of a favorite Mario Kart game. Um, okay, I guess we'll just get into some Mario Kart Wii discussions because that's basically what this
Yeah,
podcast is about. Uh, I mentioned last time on the last episode of the podcast about my thoughts on CTGP. Just a quick rundown for anyone that didn't get it. My thoughts on CTGP is basically that I think the CTGP itself is in a good state right now. I know they recently put out a track poll, which stupidly enough I haven't done yet. I don't know if it's closed, but I'll have a look at it. I think it's in a good state with a balance of CTs. Some fun ones, some very detailed ones. While I do wish there was a bit more funny ones, a bit more janky ones, a bit classic. I understand that things develop, and CTs are always going to get better in terms of quality, and people don't want to play awful CTs. Back in the day, it was funny. You play a CT and be like, "Oh, it's so cool" because it was so new. Whereas nowadays, people don't really like that. So I think it's in a good place, but it's not. For me, it's not like it used to be. But that's a me problem. That's not anyone else's problem. I don't know what you think about CGP right now.
I think that honestly, I don't think it's in the best of places. And although it's getting better, because I know the recently they got rid of the old council, who basically the old council ruined a lot of CTGP by bringing in, taking out legacy tracks and
Oh,
also voting in tracks that many people did not like and did not want to see. For example, Water Village and Saltwater Lake and Galvani Falls, tracks like that that were in the pack for less than uh, 8 months and then removed were basically made a lot of people angry, and it's gotten into a better place with the new council who are starting to do more stuff. And the first thing that they did, which was very good, is made it so we could all vote on what tracks got removed. However, I still think there's a lot that they can do, uh, especially with the old tracks in the pack, the legacy tracks, where I think that they should start to make creators focus on more legacy tracks for updating than creating new tracks, because I think the legacy tracks are something that should stay in CTGP. But the reason why people hate them so much is because they're never updated. No one's ever updated them. And the biggest example I can see from all of the removal polls is Item Fireland, which everyone, a lot of people like Item Fireland. However, everyone, even if you like it and even if you hate it, have said to cancel that they want it updated because it's one of those tracks that needs an update but is not getting one. A lot of legacy tracks that have been removed in like the past 2 years, I think could easily come back into the pack if they were to be updated. One of my favorite tracks, Caladay Desert, was removed because of its jankness. Whereas there are simple fixes to that, which would enable it to re-enter CGP. A lot of other tracks like Headlong Skyway could have the same treatment, and then you have uh, something that's suited to both the casuals and the competitive, with the legacy tracks coming back, which is what a lot of people want, and also having that new feel. Even though they're on old track, they have quite a new feel because they've been updated to modern day, to how modern day is, instead of the jank that it was. Sure, they might still have a little bit of jank because that doesn't hurt a track, but it's it definitely needs they definitely need to start looking at updating the legacy tracks as well as creating more new tracks which are happening. But also, I think it's time for Bean to possibly expand CTGP and make it so there's more than 218 custom tracks. Because at the moment, I think there's a lot more custom tracks that need to be in CTGP, but I have a feeling there's just 218 for now, with how many spectacular CTs are getting made and how many of the legacy tracks people want back in the pack. I think there should be an expansion because there's more demand now for CTs than ever before. And what's happening is I'm seeing a lot of competitive custom track players leave because of the state of CCGP. And I think the way to fix that is to expand as well as to bring back some of those legacy tracks, but give them a new coat of paint.
well,
But yeah, it's just
no, you raise a good point. I mean, I'd happen to agree with what you said. I mean, the legacy tracks, some of them names you said, Headlong Skyway, Caladay Desert, they bring back memories from back in the day when I first started playing, like 2011, 2012. These were good tracks that you'd want to pick online because you'd see like a rate that custom track episode on them, or you just play them and they're enjoyable. And yeah, you look in the pack now, and I only know half the CTs, and I think especially a thing that I've noticed a lot is that you can play CTs, especially if you play CT worldwides, because I'm more of a casual CT player. You play CT worldwides, and only half the tracks in the track pack get picked because people only like a certain amount of tracks. Half of the tracks people don't like, and they don't pick them. And I ended up doing a sort of series where I went on CTs from 5K to 9K because I'm not a CTs player, so I thought, I'll just make a new license, see how far I get. Yeah, I managed to get to 9K, but you ended up playing. It was only happening because we were only playing the same like 15 tracks. No one wanted to pick any new tracks, and I think you're probably right. If you expanded CTGP to add more than 218 and put some legacy tracks with updates back in, people would want to play more. You'd get a lot more traffic in CT Worldwides, because I think the problem now is that you search for CT Worldwides and you're not finding any. A lot of the times I've been sat there going, "Oh, I want to play CT Worldwides," and nobody's playing them, and I have to wait like 10 minutes just for a room to fill. And
Yeah.
I think legacy tracks are a big selling point. You put loads of legacy tracks in with updates, old players will want to come back and play. Because that would draw me back in. I mean, I still play CTs now, but I'd want to play them all the time if I found out that tracks from when I was a kid are going to be back and actually playable now. It doesn't make any sense to not do it, and I'm glad the new council are listening to the player base a bit more. Obviously, I've not really had any experience with the council in the first place, but if the old council were just ignoring them, because I think I'm not going to comment on it because I don't really have any opinions on it, but I know a lot of people get mad at Peaks and Bean keeping Peaks in because it's his track. Obviously, it's quite a jank track, but I think it's fun. I don't think they should get rid of it. If anything, they should compromise and put it as a secret track. But
Yeah.
yeah, I know there's a bit of an issue, well, that I've seen in the community. So a lot of people are saying that there's a privilege higher up of having your own tracks in there, and you don't want them to get removed.
I
So
mean, people do say that Bean has privileges with his tracks Six King, Incendia, and Peaks, but I know for a fact that Bean has said publicly that he does not mind if Six King is removed or updated by anyone else. He does not mind if that track gets removed, because I think what it is Bean knows that what tracks are good, what tracks are fun playing wise, and that's minus the jank of Peaks and also minus the jank of Incendia. They are good tracks to drive. Whereas Six King, you can get lost easily, and it's one of the more interesting tracks that has ever been added into CGP. And I can see that Bean he cares about the tracks that are good tracks and tracks that are actually fun for the player base. Whereas and then Six King isn't one of those, and that's why he's fine with that getting removed.
yeah, I was gonna say Six Kings is a good. I think it's an enjoyable track. I mean, it is annoying to get lost on. I definitely know what you mean. It's really like non-welcoming to new players, and I think that's probably an issue that the CT community itself, needs to work on a bit. A lot of these, because they're custom tracks, a lot of people aren't familiarized to them. So a lot of the times with these complex layouts and complex shortcuts that are valid, because that's something that I probably didn't touch on in my last episode, but I think is a valid complaint. As someone who hasn't played CTs properly in like 10 years, it's really difficult coming back to these new CTs where some of them, the only optimal lines to take are ones with shortcuts. Like Banished Keep's a good track, but to do well on Banished Keep, you need to know the cuts. And I guess it's a skill issue, but I can't be bothered to sit in time trial to go and learn the opening cut to Banished Keep and learn the most optimal route through it. I think we need a balance of tracks where you could just play them, and I guess that's what people say the retros are for. But we need more new CTs that are both that have loads of shortcuts that you can do. Well, maybe not loads of shortcuts, but you have some good shortcuts that take skill, but also some just normal lines that aren't really difficult. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Banished Keep, but it's one of those examples where you can look at it and go, it is a difficult track for new players to get accustomed to, because a lot of the time you go on CT Worldwide and you see that new player number 7 with 4K VR is always going to come dead last, almost a lap down on Banished Keep, because they have no chance. And I think that was probably like back in the day when you played CTs. You probably would like it would be really competitive because only the people that wanted to get CTs would get them. Otherwise, people would just play regular Nintendo Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Whereas now you have to sort of get Wi-Fi to play, and like CTGP is just the optimal installation of Wi-Fi. It just comes bundled in. So I think, yeah, if I was to say that, like, tell the council anything, I'd definitely say, new CTs, make sure that they are user friendly, because not everybody's a competitive player. But then again, I also understand why you would cater to competitive players. They're really what keeps the game going.
Mm. I mean, I get with casuals saying that we need less jank, we need these tracks removed because they're not fun to play. But I get it because I used to be that kind of player. When I first started like 2 years ago, I did not ever play custom tracks. when I started playing them, and then I did really badly on all of them, but I just kept playing, and I don't know what it was. It might have been because of the year I started, which was like 2020, 21. It was quite, there were still quite a lot of jank tracks in, but I think jank tracks actually trains you as a player because you know where to go and where not to go. You know what is going to kill you and what's not going to kill you. And I don't know why casuals don't really like jank because I think it's a good learning, a good stepping stone, and good for to learn what in a track is jank and what isn't, because it really does help to know if the track is going to function properly, as well as um if it's going to be able to be played properly.
Yeah,
But I I do think that the casuals do have somewhat of a point when it comes to um, tracks being too jank. However, I don't know if there's a way that we could make it 50-50 in the pack, like make it so there's an even spread of jank tracks and just good to drive tracks, because that would possibly work. But I mean, there's not really a way because I've always said there's a split between the casual CT players and the competitive CT players with their track picks. So I mean, there's probably not a very easy way to solve this problem.
yeah. I think you raise a good point there about splitting the pack. It's difficult because you could sit here and offer so many easy solutions, like in your head being like, oh, we'll just you know match VR and worldwides based on like match players based on VR, but you can't really do that because that's altering the code of the game itself. That's I imagine it's a massive task for Bean to do. I don't think that's something he could just take like 2 days to patch, but even still,
Hmm.
I don't think that would be worth it because then at that point you're not really gaining VR because okay, it's like skill based matchmaking on modern games. You play Warzone, for example. I mean, I haven't played in ages, but I don't remember when I used to play that. You'd get like a really good game. You'd get like 5 kills or whatever, and you'd win pretty comfortably. And then the next few games, you just get put with so many better players because you're now part of that high percentile, and skill based matchmaking doesn't really work because you hit a point where you're not really playing against anyone worse than you or around your skill level. You just keep playing against better players, and that's not because you're getting better. It's because better players are moving up the ranks, and skill based matchmaking is just awful. And I don't think you should put it in Mario Kart. And that's the whole point of bogies. They have tiers for a reason. You work your way up from the bottom. That's how competitive systems work. So I have no complaints about that. But yeah, I do agree on maybe we should split the CT pack half and half, or maybe like 3/4 competitive, 1/4 non-competitive, and I don't know. Maybe we
Yeah,
should, maybe we as a community we should make an effort to try and point out to newer CT players. Here are some easy CTs to pick up. But then again, do we really have to cater to people who don't know? It's a decent
right.
discussion, and
Yeah,
you're never really going to find an answer to it because no one's ever happy really. So um, I guess CTGP will develop. I think as long as the council keep listening to the fans, then that's all that really matters for now. Because if you're not listening to the fans, then you have an issue there. Because
hmm,
no one will want to play anymore. And I like the idea that I like the fact that Mogies do CT Mogies because if you didn't have CT Mogies, then um, you know CT Worldwide would be the most unfun, boring, sweaty thing ever, and I'd never play them ever. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like a good high VR room, and I don't know, maybe that's something that you know Bean or someone could look at is how the VR system works because I feel like a lot of the times I start playing a worldwide and I'm constantly matched against mid 7K players, which is fine, but it feels like there's a massive group of people who play online that are getting stuck at 7K, and it's quite difficult to progress to 8K and 9K. I only managed to get to 9K when I'm in a room with other 9Ks, because I can't beat them because I don't have that much of a skill issue. But on worldwides, I can beat 9K players, but it's so rare you ever get a room with 9Ks, and it's just a worldwide system. So I guess that's probably not a good base to base your skill on.
I don't think it's really the worldwide system, but I think it's more to do with how small the player base has gotten, because there are with it being a mod, there aren't going to be as many players as there were in the heydays of Mario Kart Wii, obviously. So
Yeah,
I've seen, especially in CTs, there's there's either a really bad room where you have to play it as a high VR, you have to play that room because
yeah,
there's no other room about, or there's a really good room with where everyone's like 8K or above. And those rooms are very difficult because everyone knows all the tracks, they know every single strat. I don't know what it is. I haven't played worldwides, RT worldwides for a long time, but when those were a thing for me, I always saw that you'd normally be matched with people around your skill level, but normally there'd be like if you're like a 7K, you'd be matched with other 7K, 6Ks, 5Ks, but there'd normally always be sometimes be a 9K in there as well. And that's probably because of the how small the player base is now. Because there's when you get a full room, there's normally a lot of different flexings of VR because there aren't that many rooms. So the game can only put you into one room. So it's definitely a player base issue with the differences between the rooms and the differences between the VR in those rooms.
yeah. Yeah. Just I mean, I don't really have anything else to argue against that. I think you you have a good point there about it is definitely a player base issue because for someone who plays a lot of RT worldwides, that it generally is just a player base issue. A lot of the time, you start off with a room of like three people, and they have what like you have like your 8.5K, your 6.9K, and you have your 4K, and the 4K
Yeah,
always comes last. This and then sometimes the 6.9K beats the 8.7 or whatever, and it's a lot of trading, and you are really lucky to get one of them rooms. I think RT worldwides are a bit different because the skill rating fluctuates so much because a lot of RTs are just luck tracks. I mean, I'm not going to argue
yeah,
which tracks are and aren't luck tracks, but a lot of RTs are luck tracks, and a lot
yeah,
of the time you're going to sit there and think, well, I've just been fucked out of winning, or I've just been like I've experienced it the other day. I mean, I was playing bad on some races, but when you have one of them really low VR players in there, you just get shit on, and the VR that you gained over a few days because you've not had any good rooms gets destroyed because you play Peach Gardens and you
mhm,
don't get a bill on last lap. You get a shock
yeah.
instead. Um,
I, I've had many of those times where I've when you get into a room where you're like a 9K, you're like 9.3, something like that, and you get into a bad room and you just get drained of your VR because they're picking stuff like Mario Raceway
yeah,
every
yeah,
single every single race. But
yeah,
those rooms are the thing is it's frustrating. However, it's how the game is.
yeah, exactly.
It's you're never gonna get away from that. And I mean I get your point with the maybe changing the VR a little bit, the way it works. But I honestly think that it's nice to have um that sense of when luck tracks are chosen, that sense of not knowing what's going to happen, because RNG controls luck tracks, and I do think that's quite a good thing because it means that you'll never get the same race twice in a row. You will always have a different race every single time you load onto one of those luck tracks because you never know. The 4K might get a bill or a golden mushroom and do all the cuts that they can and end up surprising you and beating you, or you could just run it to your heart's content. There's really there's many different things that could happen.
Yeah, that's fair. I've nothing to argue with that because you're not wrong. Uh, the ability to shake up the game. I mean, it's a party game at the end of the day, it wasn't like Nintendo didn't develop it to be competitive. Yeah, we've just made it competitive by playing it and developing Mogi. But yeah, the VR system doesn't need to be looked into. It's not like a thing where I'm going to be screaming like, "Oh, Bean, if you don't look into it, I'm going to make an uprising against you." It's just something that I think a lot of casuals, not me included, but a lot of casuals probably would like to maybe see a bit of investigation into it. Maybe see if there could be a way to change it. It doesn't even have to be Bean. It could just be anyone because I know loads of other people make mods for the game. So I don't know, food for thought there for any modders out there. You can maybe watch that. I know we spoke a lot about Mogi already, so I guess since you are the resident Mogi expert here, I guess we'll move on to that since it's something we already discussed.
Yeah.
Now, I you came into my Mogi the other day. Well, not into the actual race, but you came into the chat the other day to instruct me on how to play better on a tier one Mogi because I was floundering a little bit with my item usage. Now, what from your perspective, do you think Mogi's is actually like tier one is actually based on skill, or is it more of a luck based thing where you get a good teammate and you win, or like someone anchors?
Tier one is so luck based. I still can see RT tier one because it's not it's all about RNG in tier one. Like I said in worldwide, tier one is you can run it, but like the 32 tracks I just did before we started this podcast, every single race were about 3 to 4 blues, and and about 2 to 3 shocks every single race. So there's so much RNG that can happen in tier one that it's very hard to get in a rhythm and to actually do decently because it also depends on what type of room you have because you could have a room where the person last holds shock for the entire race, or you could have a room where they chain it instantly or they spam it, and it's very hard to get out of the tier one vortex as I call it because you you can have some good results. You can like score 100, but then you might just score 60 the next time because it fluctuates. Your scores fluctuate because of how hard tier one is as because of the way they play. They all basically what I say is in tier one, if you get an item box first set in first, you always know the person who's in second is going to throw their red at you. They're going to do it straight away because they don't think about how to use their items. They just use everything as soon as they can get it.
Yeah,
Which I mean is you can see why they do that, but it's not something that anyone in higher tiers do, and that's why people usually stay in tier one. However, there are people in tier one who deserve to be out of tier one. However, tier one cannot prepare you for the higher tiers because no one in the higher tiers plays like tier one. So it's very hard to. It's one thing to get promoted to not see tier one, but it's another thing to stay there because you'll be used to tier one shocks and tier one playing instead of anything else.
yeah, because I know what you mean about the item spamming in straight away because well, as we saw last time I played the Mogi, it's just a case of well, you get an item and I'm guilty for it. You spam it straight away. I guess it's just a competitive play style. You develop it as you play. As soon as you mentioned it, I sort of thought about it and I was actually spam my items to get a better one. It's not worth it. You want to save your item to get a good one. You get a good one, then you can move up the field a bit and save it for a cut or whatever. I think probably reading the shocks is one that I need to work on. Just making sure I've got a dodge item ready for when someone is going to use the shock. Learning where those tier one shocks are. I mean, I haven't played recently, but I'm going to start playing again. I just sort of took a week off after that horrible Formula Kart Wii stream. Uh, but yeah, I think I agree with you in terms of the sort of vortex of tier one. It's the same with other games. I'm a massive Overwatch player, And at the minute, we're feeling the same thing as me and a couple of my mates that we play. We play in a diamond level in Overwatch, which isn't that great. But when a few seasons ago, like 1 or 2 seasons ago, I decided to solo queue on my main account, and I got to Masters 5, which is not too like it's not easy to get there, but it's not majorly difficult. It's not like top end. It's just below top end, and getting to Masters 5 was a big achievement. But it is luck based on your team, because sometimes you can have the worst DPS on the planet, sometimes you can have the best DPS on the planet. But you just whatever competitive game mode, there's always going to be an elo hell. You're always going to get stuck because you don't know, especially with Mogi as well. Mogi can be team based. I mean, I know I've seen a lot in Tier 1 recently, a surgence of FFA. For some reason, everyone wants to play FFA. I mean, I'm not against it, because I play better with FFAs. But with the team based thing, it's really just luck based, because your teammate could be really good or your teammate could be really bad. You can get anchored completely, or you can anchor yourself. And I will say it doesn't necessarily bother me, but Mogi is a toxic place. It's very toxic. I don't know about in your experience, but especially in my experience, just watching in, it can be very toxic. But it's the nature of a competitive game. Is the reason why I put that down too, because people don't want to lose. I don't blame them for not wanting to lose, but it's
It is.
it's toxic.
It is very. Yeah. I can still see in any tier, there will be toxic people. However, I know that the casual view of competitive is that everyone's toxic, everything's toxic. That is not the case. There are some
Yeah, for sure.
genuinely lovely people in any of the tiers you see, but one of the things is people don't like most team events because they don't like having the prospect of getting anchored. And that's where a lot of the toxicity comes from. It comes from having a bad mate or having a really unlucky mogi. However, I mean, I've had some bad mates before, but whenever I get bad mates, I usually say don't really care, because it's all I care about is doing well myself. I remember once, about a year and a half ago, there was a CT Tier 1 Mogi where I got a guy called Estrobink. I
Oh
think
my
most
Astro!
people,
I fucking love
yeah,
Astro. Oh, it's so sad. He's disappeared, but yeah, he's brilliant.
most people know about Estrobink from his art. This was his first ever CT Mogi, and I was his teammate. And as soon as I got him, I was happy to get him because I love Estro. I think everyone loves Estro. However, I knew straight away that I wasn't winning because I knew that Estro has never played a CT before. But that's the mindset you've got to get. You've got to get when you know you have a bad mate, you don't need to get into the mindset that we can win. I got into the mindset that, oh well, I'll do my best. If we don't win, that doesn't matter. And I ended up scoring 87 that Mogi, and my teammate ended up scoring 0. But I wasn't mad because I just had fun. And that's what some people don't do. Most of the toxicity comes from not having fun. And if you just relax yourself, and also if you're in a VC with friends, it's normally you don't get as toxic. And but that's one of the things that I still don't like about Mogi is the toxicity, and I can see where every single casual comes from when they say I'm not playing Mogi again because it's toxic. But there are genuinely some people in tier 1 that are very lovely people. That there are a lot of people who put a bad name on us Mogi mains just because of how they are, and that's unfortunate because it means that the competitive scene does not expand as much as we want it to, and means that we have been losing quite a few members of the community, uh, and not gaining many, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, well, okay, then maybe a bit late, so it's kind of my bad to everyone listening and just in general. What exactly is your involvement in Mogi in terms of the hierarchy of sort of staff? Like, what do you have a specific role, or are you just a player who plays it a lot? Because from what I hear, is using a lot of we, which makes sense for a community sense, but I know that you I've seen you with a lot of different roles in Mogi. Do you have a specific job to do in Mogi?
At the moment, I am a reporter, and all reporters do is they accept tables into the summaries, and they also ping and strike people for ping for Mogi together and strike people when they are late or they don't have a correct tag or they drop.
No, you're one of
Uh,
them.
Apart from that, there isn't really much I do, although it's when it comes to certain of the community decides together with there's a big divide between the lounge staff, which are all of the arbitrators and bosses, and Mogi Lounge. One of the biggest things that's happening right now is people want Bullet Bike to be classed as viable, because at the moment only Muck Bike and Flame are classed as viable, which again is one of the reasons why I know a lot of casuals don't like Mogi Lounges, because you can only go those two vehicles. However, the community recently, one of the biggest members of the community, Sergeant, who was a very good tier 5 main, who was one of the best in the world, um, got banned for 6 months because he went bullet bike in an FFA for one
In an
GP.
FFA, wow, that's
In an
harsh.
FFA for one GP. It was his fourth. It was his fourth case of uh, quote unquote inting. However, all of those cases were in, I believe, FFA, and all were to do with going an unviable vehicle. But he got a 6 month from it, and from that point on, there's been quite a few people who don't like the way Mogi Lounge has been running with the bans and also the unviables, and there's something quite and as well as that, one of the funniest things I've seen is that there's a thing in Mogi Lounge called cart exception, which is given to the best carters in the game because they are a lot better on carts than they are on bikes. However, a lot of people have wanted cart exceptions to get removed because of no bullet bike, and there people are saying that we can't have bullet bike, but we can have cart exceptions, and that I get where they're coming from, but we should keep cart exceptions 100%.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
also, there's this people saying that we need bullet bike exception and we need exceptions for an A tier vehicle if we're going off of Troy's tier list.
Yeah.
I know there is one case of a vehicle, not a car, of a bike that is allowed in for one person, and that person is a player called Sep, who is RT Class B, which means he can see tier 4 and tier 5, I believe. And
Yeah.
he what Sep has a sneak stick section, which means he's allowed to play with Sneaker because of how good he is on the vehicle. He's the only person who doesn't have who is allowed to go on any inside drift vehicle other than Flame Runner um and Mock Bike. But what I don't get is staff do not like they don't test people to see if they're good enough on certain inside drifting bikes. Because I know a few people who are good enough on bullet bike to be classed as an exception. However, staff do not want to create more viable vehicles, nor do they want to give exceptions, which I think is pretty interesting. Because I think if we were to uh, make bullet bike viable, it might mean that some more casuals come in because they're allowed to go bullet bike, and bullet bike's quite a fun vehicle. But I mean, I get where the staff are going with not allowing um, bullet bike because they want to, in as I quote, protect the integrity of lounge, which I think is quite preposterous. But I do get it, because if we were to allow every single vehicle to be classed as viable, then it would mean that lounge is not as competitive as it used to be. It wouldn't be as competitive. So it's there's a very big divide in the competitive community between the viable vehicles and the unviable vehicles, and this whole malarkey over it.
Yeah, you raised a good point there about the exceptions thing. I think personally on my front, I think especially for a kart point of view, you definitely should have kart exceptions because there's people like 7K who they
Yeah.
are the best karters in the world. If they're better on karts, they can beat a tier one player on kart. Then they should be allowed to use a kart because at the end of the day, if that's what you're better at, you should be allowed to do that. I mean, my opinion doesn't matter to the Mogi staff, and I'm not really bothered about that. But I think banning someone or punishing someone for inting in an FFA is kind of poor because I don't really see why it matters if it's an FFA. They're only ruining themselves. And I know what you said about it's to protect the integrity of lounge, but at the end of the day, I mean personally, especially from someone who's been floating around lounge, only playing the odd event every now and again. I don't think seeing someone go a bad vehicle or not a viable vehicle in an FFA is going to make me think that lounge is a joke. It's mainly going to think, but it's going to make me think lounge is better. I'm going to go, oh well, in an FFA I can use whatever vehicle I want. I'm more likely to play now because if I'm just feeling like I want to have a bit of fun in an FFA, then I'll just go a random vehicle. Whereas if I have to go flame or mark, I might get put off. I mean, personally, I'm not bothered because I use mark anyway. But for other people, because there are a general set of the community that do just like playing lightweights. I mean, I don't get it personally because I'd get too pissed off getting bumped around all the time. I get pissed off using mark all the time. But there are general people who like playing on lightweights, and I think probably shunning them away and is going to reduce Mogi's size in terms of it's going to reduce the growth. As you said, Mogi isn't really growing at this point because no one really wants to come in. And I think the toxicity is a big part of that, as well as just the whole rule thing. Because a massive part for me not playing Mogi was the rules. I think I said it last podcast. I was too scared to play because I didn't want to get a rule wrong. And the first Mogi I played was, funny enough, as we're talking about it, Estro was the one that got me into Mogi. I met him through a different streamer. We started because we were both moderating for this other streamer, and I was talking to him because he was just friendly. I was talking to him, all cool. He was like, oh, I was like, oh, I want to play compet Mario Kart, but I don't know how. And he was like, oh, join Mogi. I play. You should come play with me. You can do squad queue. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll join. We played the Mogi together. I didn't do bad, but I didn't do great. And then I didn't play again for ages until I started speaking to Estro again when he came back off his little sabbatical. We played again, and I accidentally picked random because at that point I was just so used to playing worldwides that I always just pick random on worldwides. Can't bother to think about what track I'm picking. And I got 2 strikes for it, and I didn't play Mogi for a good 3 months then because I didn't want to play because I didn't want to get strikes again, and I didn't want to get muted or banned for picking random. I wasn't streaming. Funnily enough, I ended stream before a few races before because it was lagging too much. But so I picked random, got a strike for it, and I didn't want to come back because I thought, why would I want to play something where I'm going to get punished for making a mistake? There's no way you can prove I made a mistake, but it was just unfortunate that the one random track I picked was a repick, and it put me off. But I'll give the lounge staff credit. The rules they put in now, they've sort of cleaned it up from the last time I was there. They're very easy to follow. They're not anything too crazy, and I've come back into it now. I've got all the rules set down, so I know not to click random, and if I do, I stream anyway, so you can see I accidentally clicked it or I clicked it. But yeah, I think probably not a barrier for me, but the biggest barrier for Mogi is the toxicity, and I think I don't know what lounge staff does. I don't know if you can give us all an insight into it, but I know a lot of people from different marginalized communities don't want to play because if they do bad, they're just going to get called slurs and they're just going to get insulted for their community. Because I mean, I saw the other Mogi I did. Someone put their flag as the rainbow flag instead of a country, and they did bad one race, and their teammate just started slating them for it. I mean, do you know if Lounge staff does anything about that? Because from what I saw, nothing happened. I mean, I think the person just took it on the chin and left it, but that's surely a barrier for people to be playing.
They do give restrictions for what people say. However, it's normally uh, directed towards saying banned words in lounge, like KYS and the R word, the hard R.
Yeah, yeah.
Stuff like, if you try to get rid of that, it'll be an instant restrict or an instant mute. However, when it comes to toxicity like that, when it comes to just slamming them for their performances, there's not really much that they do, and that's down to the fact that it's just how people are. You can't really change them that much, and also with it, it's toxic, but it's not like they're saying multiple slurs at you, and
Yeah.
unless they are, and that will be a restrict. However, they don't do that. Most people don't do that. They normally just say like, "What are you doing? Why did you do that? Why did you use that? Why are you team killing, etc., etc." Normally, just asking. Normally, if normally the people who aren't toxic, they would like to know why you've done things in a certain way, why you've used an item there, for example, or why you haven't held something. And usually it sometimes does come across as toxic. However, normally most people just want to know why you did things a certain way, and why you they obviously know that you are trying your hardest. I think everyone knows that everyone tries their hardest in a mogi.
Yeah.
However, normally, if they're being quote unquote toxic, it's normally because they're just uh angered at a certain race because of a certain thing that happened, and or because of what their teammate has done, and a certain thing, a certain action that the teammate could have done that could have been easily avoidable. For example, team killing. I know team killing is something that people get very angry at when their teammate accidentally hits them, and
Yeah.
normally it's always an accident. However, it is a very annoying thing, because you could be in a very good position with a very good item, and then just taking good lines because you know there's no threat of your teammate hitting you because they're right in front of you, and then you just get picked by them, and that is sometimes very infuriating. But apart from that, I don't really see much of the toxicity in lounge as much. And also, I don't see the reporters do also report uh people censor evading, or um just saying toxic stuff, and that is restricted. However, apart from that, there's not really much else we can do when it comes to if people are being very toxic, because they're doing it within the rules, unless they uh censor evade and say a word that you're not allowed to in lounge. Other than that, there's not really, we can't mute them for just being overly toxic, which is quite unfortunate, because I do think that if we could restrict and mute people because they're just being toxic to their teammates, it would make lounge a nicer place.
Yeah. I'd happen to agree on that. As in, a lot of people probably do get put off because you see someone else's teammate go off on them because they made a mistake. But I see what you mean, but you can't really punish that because at the end of the day, it's not really breaking any rules. And sometimes people are generally just curious. If someone is curious, like, well, why do you use that? Sometimes it can come off as aggressive. Sometimes it is aggressive, but sometimes it is for the benefit of yourself. And I don't want to put the blame on people, the aggressors in quotation marks here, because sometimes some people just generally just take things the wrong way. I mean, we're all
Hmm.
human. Some people don't understand that they were generally just curious, and they're just like, oh, why do you use your item there? That was really poor. Some people might take that the wrong way, so I understand why you can't really punish people for it. But yeah, I was curious on what what the lounge staff would do to people who are toxic and especially the people who seem to use words that are not very nice whatsoever.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
with that, actually, I'd like to point out with the most toxic people in lounge are actually Japanese, which you wouldn't expect. However, the funny thing is most Japanese in lounge cannot speak very good English. So whenever they get angry, they use very broken English, which they're trying to be toxic and trying to make you very very like sad at yourself. They're trying to say like be very mean. However, a lot of people just find it very funny because of the way they speak. They say stuff like very fuck is one of the most common phrases, and please and GG's we lose and stuff like that as soon as you get a bad race. And it's honestly quite hilarious because you can see they're frustrated and they're trying to be angry, but it's so the English is so hilariously broken that it doesn't do what it does, and it just is very hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced that. I've played with Japanese players before, and the only experience I've had with them is that they've been on other teams, and I've had other people try and communicate with them. So I don't necessarily have the experience myself, but I could see how that would be funny. But yeah, I think lounge itself is a good thing. I hope it continues to prosper. But I thought it'd be interesting to touch on for someone who plays it quite a lot these sort of aspects of the environment, the attitude towards mogi, and um, what sort of goes on in mogis these days. Because you're higher ranked than I am, so yeah, and you've had way more experience, so it makes sense to ask someone who probably knows a bit more than I do because. I only score mid. Uh,
I also score mid most of the time.
that's all right then. Well, we've been going for a good 50 minutes now, which is great. Just some final conclusion. I'll ask you a final question, and then you can leave me. Well, you can leave everyone with any final thoughts you have. Favorite game of all time?
Oh, oh, Jesus Christ, that is a hard hitter. It would have to be Burnout Paradise
Oh, okay,
for the
okay,
PS3.
yeah.
Still has one of the great best graphics of all of gaming. It is such a good game, and especially one of my favorite things with the game is that whenever you crash, it slow mo's the crash and shows every single crunch of
Oh,
car of the metal crunching and of the windows breaking, and it is such a satisfying game to crash in, and I just love it.
fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, most people that know me know that talk about this endlessly. But yeah, my favorite game is Majora's Mask, the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. I think it's the peak fiction, best game ever made. I'll not have any debates on that. Uh, any final thoughts on what we've talked about in the podcast? Anything you want to leave us off with?
Uh, I will say that CTGP is going into the right direction with what it's doing, but if a lot isn't changed, then I do have a feeling that this game will uh, be done in about 2 years, and in 2 years, I think that if nothing is done, CTs and potentially RCs will have 0 rooms in a whole day.
Wow, that's pretty solid stuff. There you go, CT community and Mario Kart community in general. We need to get working on it. Now's any time you want to promote any socials you've got.
Obviously, please follow me on Twitch. I need to get affiliates.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Give follow him on Twitch. Pretty sure the name's on screen anyway. If not, just come into the Discord server link in my about section. You can find TKS in there. I think that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate this. Good to get your Mogi and CT opinions in there.
It's been great to be here. It's been very, very lovely talk.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you for watching, everyone. Please unsubscribe, unlike, and leave me a hate comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.